Hi guys, welcome. And who dat? I'm Joe, and today we're asking another pretty simple question. Who should the Saints draft with the 14th overall pick in the 2024 NFL Draft? This is a tough question. It's not an easy question at all. And I'm going to be doing a couple of videos focusing on this because things will change between now and the end of April. Right now, the Saints picks are solidified, but you never know what can happen with trades and stuff like that. Also, there are going to be compensatory picks that are allocated, and the Saints are probably going to grab 3 of those. Now, that's just on the free agents we lost last year. So the closest estimation I can get right now for the Saints draft picks, we'll pull it up right here. And this is what we are working with right now. And, you know, if no trades happen and if the compensatory picks are allocated where we think they will be, then this is what we're looking at. It's a 9-player haul. So you will get bodies out of this draft. But as you can see, we only have 1 first-round pick, pick 14 overall, 1 second-round pick. That's Denver's pick 45 overall. And then, you know, the other 7 picks are 5th round, 6th round, or 7th round. Looks like we're going to have 4 5th-round picks, 2 6th-round picks, and 1 7. So not a lot to work with when you're talking about the front of the draft. In order to accumulate some 3rd and 4th round picks, we'll probably have to trade down. There is the possibility of trading players away. And, you know, we have our salary cap issue is such that it's almost impossible to trade anyone because the contracts are too expensive for a trading team to want to deal with. And the dead cap hit, the dead money hit is too big for us to want to deal with. So I don't expect a lot of trades to happen, but the way that Marshon Lattimore's contract was restructured, I think that after this year's draft, before the beginning of next season, there is the possibility we trade Lattimore. It's going to save us on dead money the way we restructured the contract. And, yeah, whoever wants him is going to have to eat that bonus. And the bonus is basically his salary for the year. So whoever wants him is willing to pay him. And I think a lot of teams would want Marshon Lattimore, and I think a first-round draft pick is what we would get as compensation. Whether you agree or not that we should trade Lattimore, I'm just saying what we could get. We could trade Lattimore, probably get a first-round pick, and whoever wants Lattimore the most is going to throw in a little extra. So we may get a first and a third out of it. That's what I'm looking at. And those would be 2 draft picks that would be on next year's draft. But this year's draft is like this. And there's one other thing. The Carolina Panthers are very interested in our salary cap guru, Kai Harley. He's currently an assistant general manager. And if he gets hired by the Panthers to be a general manager, we get 2 compensatory 3rd-round picks because of the new rules, and this guy would be, you know, moving up the ladder and getting a job opportunity. So this is what could happen. 2 3rd-round picks, albeit they would be at the end of the 3rd round, would be really nice for this draft. And I'm sure there's some people in the front office who know how to do basically what Kai Harley does. Kind of hoping we get away from that altogether anyway. I mean, it's good to have in a pinch, but we use it to a fault and it gets us in this salary cap hell and trying to find $80 million before the new season even starts and stuff like that. Okay, so we're talking about the 14th overall pick. So we're not going to worry about the full draft arsenal that we have. We're just going to talk about pick 14. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the names of offensive players in the draft and then defensive players in the draft. This is a collection of 135 players altogether. The first round is going to be 32 picks. We pick at 14. So I'm pretty sure that somebody on these two lists are going to be drafted by the Saints with the 14th overall pick. Now, I started looking into the draft the year after we drafted Peyton Turner. So I'm thinking that maybe if I would have had a collection of 135 names, I wouldn't have got that first round pick right because the Saints reached pretty good for Peyton Turner. He might have been on my top 135. I didn't go into the draft like I have in the last couple of years. I've kind of focused on it a lot. And like I say, these player pools can change. I'm not sure if committing to the NFL is over with for these players or not. I don't know. Other things could happen. Of course, we've got the free agency to deal with and coaching changes that are going to happen. And then on top of all that, the scouting combine and the pro days. So these lists can change dramatically. There may be someone projected to go in the 4th round right now that ends up being a first round projection at the end of it. Stuff like that. But this is a list of 135 names, and that's basically slightly more than the total amount of players that will be drafted in the first 3 rounds. So I'm pretty sure we're going to find our pick 14. Let's pull up the offensive players first. This is a list of the best on offense. Highlighted in yellow are players that are projected to go in the first round. And there's a possibility that some of them may go in the first round. It all depends on if teams want to reach. As far as highlighted players go, with the yellow, I have a total of 67 highlighted. Now, this is just the offense. And then with the orange dot, those are the players that could very well be taken before we pick at pick 14. So there's your assortment of offensive players first. And I'm going to leave this list up for a minute, and you guys can get a good look at it. All 6 of those quarterbacks could potentially be taken in the first round. I have highlighted all of them because they're the potential first round pick. And then with the orange dot, those are the 3 players that are very highly likely to be gone by the time we pick at 14. So that's how the list is broken down. I believe Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels will all be taken in the first 5 picks. Do the Saints value drafting a quarterback enough to pick one with the 14th overall pick? I don't think they do. I think as long as Dennis Allen is our coach, Derek Carr is going to be our quarterback. And I don't think they want to spend a first-round pick on either Bo Nix or Michael Penix Jr. or J.J. McCarthy. There are no running backs that I think are going to be taken in the first round, honestly. But if any are, it'll be Trey Benson or Travion Henderson or Blake Corum. I really don't think any of those guys are going to go until 2nd round, 3rd round. Wide receiver, it's a huge list here. These are all guys with potential first-round grades. If somebody falls in love with Xavier Worthy or Ladd McConkey, they could be taken in the first round. All depends on what you're looking for. a lot of them are in that spot like Brian Thomas and Emeka Egbuka and Adonai Mitchell and Troy Franklin. These guys are all projected first round / second round. And a guy like Devontae Walker or Xavier Legette, a lot of people tell you, well, no, those are second round projections. They shouldn't be here. But, if somebody falls in love with Troy Franklin, they're going to go and get him. If somebody's in love with Keon Coleman, they're going to go get him. And if the Saints decide to draft Brian Thomas Jr. with the 14th overall pick, I don't think a lot of people in Louisiana are going to complain too much. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Once you get to pick 20, pick 30 in the first round, if there's a run on wide receivers, you may just go and reach and grab the one you really love. Brock Bowers is the only tight end I'm expecting to go in the first round. Jatavian Sanders is the second best tight end on the board, and he's a second round projection. And then I've got wide receiver Johnny Wilson labeled there. He's the only one really out of place. He's a wide receiver, but he's 6'7", 240 pounds, and that's the size of a tight end. And so whoever gets Johnny Wilson is going to have to utilize him wisely, and I think he would make a pretty good tight end in the league, especially if he's just out there running routes and stuff. At offensive tackle, Joe Alt and Alu Fashanu are the only two offensive tackles that are projected to be really high draft picks, potential top 10. And then I think you've got a group of them there with Latham, Mims, Fuaga, Fatanu, and Guyton. Those are all first-round projections. And those are the guys at offensive tackle that I think the Saints are going to be targeting. It's a bit of a reach at 14 to go for Guyton or maybe Fuaga or maybe Fatanu. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing these names. Might be a reach even to go for Mims at that point at 14. But like I said, if you need a tackle and Alt and Fashanu are already off the board, you're going to have to pick your favorite between Latham, Mims, Fuaga, Guyton, and you're going to have to take it. And I think that the tackle depth is so deep in this class that you could trade down a few spots, pick up an extra couple of picks, and still get a good tackle. That's the perfect scenario for me as a Saints fan. That's kind of like what I want. I would love for Joe Alt or Fashanu to fall to us at 14. That would be best case scenario. And then you just grab one right there at 14. But if they're both gone, it all depends on who you love there. And maybe the Saints love Jordan Morgan out of Arizona for all we know. Interior offensive lineman, Graham Barton is really the only guard we're expecting to see go. Troy Fatanu at tackle is projected to be a guard in the league and possibly the best guard in the draft, if that's the case. But Graham Barton's definitely a guard. And Jackson Powers Johnson is your best center. Cooper Bebe is a guard, and Van Pran is a center. Zach Frazier is a center. Some people think he can move to guard. And then after that, you're talking about second-round picks. So the Saints aren't interested in going for a center, and I'm not too keen on grabbing a center and forcing them to play guard. Burton is an option here. So that's the big list, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the big list at first, and then we're going to pull up a smaller list when we talk about who we're drafting. But that's a big list of potential offensive players taken in the first round. Let's pull up the big list of defensive players. All right, this list is slightly smaller, but as you can see, a ton of cornerbacks. And I've got a defensive lineman here. I've labeled it defensive tackle. Some of these might project to end. And then when you look at edge rusher, It's the worst category in the world. I hate that term, edge rusher. What does that mean? You're either a defensive end or a linebacker. If you're a tweener, then usually the Saints aren't interested in you. If you're a defensive end that weighs 270 pounds, the Saints will draft you. That's what they usually do. They like 6'4", 270-pound defensive ends. That's what they've always done. That's what Ryan Nielsen is doing now in Atlanta. Zach Harrison came out of Ohio State in the draft last year, and he was around a third-round projection, and he was the kind of defensive end that I thought the Saints would reach and grab. And the Saints didn't draft Zach Harrison. Atlanta drafted him because that's exactly what Ryan Nielsen and, to an extent, Dennis Allen likes. It's what we've always done with this team. And a lot of times we reach for the bigger guy for potential. We're not very good against the run or the pass. So I'm not sure if this is the way to go or not. Now, edge rusher, to me, that tells me you're too small to be a full-time defensive end, but you're really good at rushing the passer. And what the Saints usually do with edge rushers is they try to convert them into linebackers because they're no good on first and second down. Now, this past draft, we got Isaiah Foskey in the second round, and he was slightly under the measurements we usually go for. It kind of made me think, since Ryan Nielsen isn't here, perhaps we're going to take a chance on a smaller edge rusher, but let's try to generate some pressure against the quarterback. And as we all know, Isaiah Foskey came in here as a high second-round pick, I think 40th overall, and he barely saw the field. He had almost no production for the team, and a lot of it was because of his size. We're not going to try him at linebacker. We're going to try him at defensive end, and he's having a hard time getting to the quarterback because he's not big enough, doesn't have the arsenal of pass moves yet or something like that. So these tweener edges really bother me because I don't know what the Saints want to do with them. I appreciate a guy who can rush the passer, but, how good is T.J. Watt at stopping the run? I haven't looked at, the rushing stats for the defense to see, where he ranks in Pro Football Focus as far as against the run. Hey, I would take T.J. Watt in a second. And if you knew you were going to get a guy that productive when rushing the passer, then yeah, he'd be worth grabbing with a high first-round pick. So I don't know what direction, as far as edge rusher, the Saints are willing to go. Would they want to replace Cam Jordan with a defensive lineman like Byron Murphy, who's listed as a defensive tackle here? He's 280 pounds. He can easily play defensive end. But we have him listed as a defensive tackle here. Well, we've got Brian Bresee, who's going to play that kind of three-tech, smaller defensive tackle spot. So if we do get a smaller defensive tackle, I'm assuming he's going to play in a rotation, or he's really good at going after the passer from the middle of the line, or he can bounce outside and play in. Brandon Dorlus out of Oregon is listed as a defensive tackle here, and to me, he's just a pure defensive end, 270 pounds, 6'4", that kind of type, the type we usually get. And he's the kind of guy I think the Saints would draft to take Cameron Jordan's place. When you look at edge rusher, you've got guys like Turner, Latu, and Verse, who are more along the lines of 250 to 265. So can they manage on the defensive end? A lot of people are projecting the Saints to grab an edge rusher. Turner seems more like a stand-up guy. Latu and Verse, I guess, can put their hand in the dirt. I'm pretty sure Verse is the guy that can be linebacker or defensive end. It's just so hard to tell. I mean, what do you want them to do? When you draft an edge rusher, if you are drafting for the Saints at 14 and you grab one of these edge rushers, what do you want them to do? You want them to come out at defensive end on third down and rush the passer? Do you want them to play every down at defensive end and force them to get bigger and then better against the run? Or do you try to convert these guys into off-ball linebackers for first and second down and then put them on the line for third down? That's an option. I mean, we've been trying Zach Baun as a linebacker the whole time we've had him, and we finally put him on the line to rush the passer on third down. He does really good. And so I'm feeling like we've been misusing him the whole time. Not so much because we're trying to make him play linebacker. It's just that after a couple of years, you see that the guy isn't holding up at linebacker, but you've never put him on the defensive line to rush the passer. So you're misusing him. So would you spend the first pick in our draft, the 14th pick overall, for a guy that's only going to be good at rushing the passer on third down, or a guy that, may not transition to linebacker if that's what you expect him to do in the early downs? Or maybe he doesn't play against the run. He doesn't get big enough, strong enough to play against the run on early downs. Are you taking an edge rusher with the 14th overall pick to play on third downs and rush the passer? Hey, we need that. So if you want to do that and you think that's worth it, then you go ahead and grab it. Those are the issues we have at edge rusher and defensive line. Couple of more notes on the defensive line. Jer'Zhan Newton is the best overall player. He's the best defensive tackle. He's the only one, excuse me, he's the only one expected to go in the first round. And you've got the bigs with T'Vondre Sweat and McKinley Jackson. Those are the two massive nose tackles. Sweat could go in the first round. It's definitely a second-round pick. McKinley Jackson could last till the fourth round. They both serve the same purpose. Big body to take up two blockers and free up everyone else on the line. And then you've got your traditional three techs, Byron Murphy, Chris Jenkins, Leonard Taylor. These guys could play the ends, are definitely disruptive in the middle. And you got Rook or Horhoro from Clemson, and he played alongside Breezy for a couple of years before we drafted Bresee. So it'd be interesting to grab that dude and put him next to Bresee again, the familiarity and stuff like that. Linebacker. None of them should go in the first round. Edgerrin Cooper and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. are projected second-round picks. If anyone does go in the first round, it'll probably be Cooper. And I like Peyton Wilson. The problem is he's got injury issues, injury concerns. I believe he was he had to leave college football because of medicals. And then from whatever school he was at, he ended up going to North Carolina State, where they allowed him to play football, where he was medically cleared to play football, and he had a great season. So he's a good player. I'm not sure what the medical concern was or still is, but I think he's a first-round talent, and because of that injury issue, he's probably going to last until the third or fourth round. But I put him up here because you never know who's in love with Peyton Wilson. And in the massive chock-a-block at cornerback, you've got four safeties here who are first-round, second-round projections. But there's a chance no one goes for a safety in the first round. And if that's the case, you're going to have yourself one heck of a safety in the second round to choose from. And we know Dennis Allen loves his DBs. So keep an eye out for that at safety. Cameron Kinchins might be the only one taken in the first round. Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota. We got Jordan Howden out of Minnesota in the fifth round last year. And you pair him back up with Tyler Nubin. If we grab him in the second round, I could see the Saints doing that easily. And, of course, with the 14th overall pick, the Saints could easily grab a cornerback, especially if we have plans to trade Marshawn Lattimore. Now, it'd be nice to grab a guy who could play nickel. It'd be nice to grab. It'd be nice to have third and fourth round picks so we could grab multiple players for starters. But I don't know if you want to grab a pure nickelback at 14. You're probably going to be going for an outside man press guy that's going to take, that's going to have the option, the ability to take Lattimore's place on the outside. But we're going to go with Debo and Taylor on the outside. I think nickel's the spot we need to fill. Cooper DeJean would be perfect at the nickel. Nate Wiggins is your probably best overall guy now. And you can take your pick out of the Alabama kids, Arnold and McKinstry. They're both different, but they're both first-round projections. Everyone else on this list could easily be taken in the first round. It all depends on what you love. I mean, we've got Denzel Burke from Ohio State that's at the bottom of this list. And you know how it is with cornerbacks in Ohio State with the Saints. Well, with the league, everybody that comes out of Ohio State at cornerback is usually pretty good. It shows you how deep this class is when the guy this year is all the way at the bottom of the list. Ennis Rakestraw Jr. out of Missouri has a running mate, his partner in crime from Missouri, Chris Abrams-Draine. Both of those guys could go in the first round. Rakestraw was a 6th-round projection up until a couple of months ago. People have fallen in love with him. That is your big list of players on defense. Okay, you guys pause the video and take a look at all of that. That's 135 players, 67 of them highlighted as potential first-round picks, and then 16 of them highlighted as most likely the players that are going to get taken before the Saints draft at number 14. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up a list of 50 players here and put that right next to me. And here we are. We're at pick 14. And this is your list. The best players at each position, minus running back. And I've still got the orange dots here. These are the guys that more than likely could be off the board. And I've got 18 of them highlighted here. We're picking at 14. So of all the guys that are highlighted, I would say if any of them make it to 14, there's a chance. I don't think Kinchins would be the guy at 14. I don't think for sure Edgerrin Cooper would be the guy at 14. And I'm pretty sure Jackson Powers Johnson won't be the guy at 14. I don't think Graham Barton would at guard either. I think if we do go offensive line, it's going to be one of the tackles. If Joe Alt or Lou Fashanu is there, then we take that and we don't even think about it. And that's the pick, and we're happy with it. As a matter of fact, if Joe Alt or a Lou fall out of the top 10, I wouldn't mind trading up from 14 to go and get them to make sure we get them. I think those are the two that are certain left tackle projections. You can mess around with Latham, Mims, Fuaga, and try to get them to play left tackle, but those are right tackles in college. Latham's a guy that projects to play at left decently. They're all massive players and really good players. I don't see a downside to any of them, really. Latham, when he looks bad, he looks really bad. But, he only allowed 2 sacks all year. And when he looks good, he looks really good. Marius Mims is just dominant. But I think he's had a couple of injuries in his college career, and so you worry about that. And then Fuaga is just the man. I think if you're going to draft pure right tackle and you want him to play right tackle, I think Fuaga's the way to go, though. Mims is a monster, and so is Latham. And I'm focusing on those guys because that's probably where we're going. If somebody like, there's no way Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr. fall to us. So you would have to be in love with Rome or Brian Thomas or, God forbid, Keon Coleman. If you're in love with one of those guys, then yeah, they're worth taking with the 14th pick. I would go with Brian before Keon. It would be a toss-up between Rome and Brian if I was actually going for wide receiver there. I wouldn't worry about a quarterback. I don't know if Bo Nix can be the future of the franchise. Michael Penix looked bad in the championship game, so he's probably going to fall out of the first round. But there are so many quarterback-desperate teams that there's a chance that Penix or McCarthy or Nix go before the first round's over. I don't think the Saints need to mess with that here. You want to trade down and pick one up later at the end of the first round, pick up some extra picks, I'd feel better about that. But at 14, you're lined up here to get a really good player. I'm sure Nate Wiggins and Cooper DeJean are going to be gone. But, yeah, if Cooper is still there, Cooper DeJean is still there, that would be a massive pick because he can play all over the field. I wouldn't say that you want to grab him because he's the best nickelback. He can play anywhere, including safety. So if you grab him, you'll have a nickelback, but you'll also have a backup outside guy and safety. So very strong possibility. And like I said, and we all know, Dennis Allen loves secondary players. So if we pick Terry and Arnold or Kool-Aid McKinstry with the 14th overall pick, hey, Kamari Lassiter, Quinion Mitchell. If we pick any of those guys with our 14th overall pick, I'm not going to say bad pick because we desperately don't need cornerback, but we're so good at drafting cornerbacks. I'm pretty sure who we grab at 14 is going to be really good. And if it ends up being the safety Kinchins, or Newman or even Bullock, then I'll feel like, well, Allen, he knows what he's talking about when it comes to secondary players for sure. So I wouldn't have an issue with that. Jazon Newton at defensive tackle. If we go ahead and grab him, I'm going to feel like, well, we're double dipping because we got Bresee last year. And I don't know if Bresee and Newton lined up in the middle of the defensive line for the majority of the snaps in the future, But Newton had a good year against the run this year, so. And he's the best pass rusher, he and Byron Murphy, in my opinion. So Newton's not out of question. And then, of course, your edge rushers, Turner, Latu, and Verse. 3 people will give you 3 different answers on who's the best at that. So, of course, tight end Brock Bowers. He's definitely in most people's top 10 overall prospects. So Bowers is a tight end. If he falls to 14, as far as value goes, he'll probably be like number 1 on your big board. But I don't think we take a tight end there. Brock Bowers is supposed to be a generational player. So it's kind of like saying, well, you don't need Travis Kelce, but if you grab him with 14 overall, do you regret it later on? So is Bowers Travis Kelce? Well, he's supposed to be a generational player. So you guys take a look at that list right there. Because I think when it's all said and done, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels will be gone when we pick at 14. Harrison and Neighbors will be gone. Brock Bowers will probably be gone. Joe Alt, Alu, Fashanu will be gone. Jazon Newton may be gone. And out of those edge rushers, you're going to have 1 left. I think there's going to be 1 left when we pick at 14, whether it's Turner, Latu, or Verse. I think at least one of them will be gone by the time we pick. I'm pretty sure one of them will still be there. And those top 4 cornerbacks will probably all be gone. But if one of them is still sitting there at 14, you know how we are. So that's what you're looking at. Anybody that's highlighted that falls to us at 14 is worth the pick, except for Powers Johnson and Edgerrin Cooper. I think even Cameron Kinchens at 14 overall, hey, if he's the guy we want and Dennis Allen says yeah, then he's probably worth it. Graham Barton, I'm not sure about that one. So there you go. That's the list. And you guys can come back to this video and, go to the mock draft simulators and do it yourself and see who would you take under the gun. So let's say that let's take these 18 highlighted players out of the equation, and who would you take? And I'm a big fan of leaning towards offensive tackle. I believe we need 2 of them. It'd be nice to grab Alt or Fashanu so you can have a surefire left tackle. But, yeah, I'm the fan of picking at 14, going with either J.C. Latham or Amarius Mims or Talisi Fuaga. That's where I'm at. That is heavily where I'm at. If you don't get an offensive tackle, then the next spot I'm looking at is wide receiver or edge rusher or defensive tackle. So I'm talking about offensive line, defensive line, or wide receiver. You would have to be in love with one of those wide receivers. It's a deep class at wide receiver. You can definitely get one in the second round, a really good one in the second round. You can get a couple of really good ones in the third round, too, which is why I wish we had third-round picks, because we could, avoid wide receiver altogether. But if you're in love with Brian Thomas or Rome Odunze, they're there at pick 14. So who should we take with pick 14? I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation. I hope you guys appreciate the list that I give you. I'll be doing a couple of who should we take at pick 14 updates as we get closer to the draft. And you've got my answer. As it sits right now with pick 14, we should either go offensive tackle, wide receiver, or defensive line. And as far as the defensive line goes, I look at Bresee as, the pass rushing guy, so I would kind of want a big guy. I think the only one worth a first or second round pick would be T'Vondre Sweat. Getting him in the second round would be almost miraculous. It would be really cool. And like I said, edge rusher, geez, man, can Jared Verse do it? Can he take Cam Jordan's place and play every down? Is that something Latu or Turner can do? They're going to have to if I'm drafting them. So there you go. Offensive tackle, defensive line, edge rusher, wide receiver. You take everyone that's highlighted off the board, and I have my choice of all of those. I'm probably going with Amarius Mims or Fuaga or Latham. And really, it's up to the coaching staff who they like the most, because I think they all project the same. Massive 6'6", 6'7", 330-pound men who, when they get their hands on you, it's over with. And we need offensive tackles. That's my video. Subscribe to Rosenfield 10 for more videos like this. I'm Joe. And until the next one, I will talk to you later. Who dat?